Yeah.
So I'm just happy. I'm not gonna bully anyone.
Yeah, I've certainly been bullied enough today. But in the bottom left, looking to bully his opponent maybe. For Maturino now, it's Astrea.
And in the top right, so you do have the blue Zerg, Scarlett.
So you know Zombie Grub. I talked to Scarlett before this series last night, and actually I was talking to her for quite a while because she has opinions on this matchup, and I'll let you guess what those opinions are. But I said, hey, Scarlett, you know, this is one of the big NA matchups. Astrea, Scarlett generally defines who's in third place, who's in second, who's in first place in the region. How you feeling? And she said, you know what? Protoss is stupid imba right now. I'm losing to Protoss players that are 1,000 MMR below me because they're crazy 2-base all-ins. And yeah, she's not. Astrea is, of course, a different story. This is someone you can prep for. But look at the setup already. It's Nexus first, or I guess Pylon Nexus coming out of Astrea, and Scarlett, full gas hatch. Very different builds.
I don't think I have to guess what her opinions are. I feel like they've been locked in for a while. And by the way, this is a metro station. Radset Metro. Yeah, just, you know, making sure we got all the correct information out. But it is a very interesting map. So, and we have two interesting players individually, and I think they're very interesting when they go up against each other. And I think it's on one of the, if not the most interesting map actually, in the new map pool. Yeah, I think so. Actually, it used to be way different too, which that was a laugh. I like its current iteration now, but yeah, things are gonna get a little different ZVP wise, perhaps than, for instance, Scaleless Rainer series earlier on. I think Astrea is just a different type of Protoss in the first place, and then there's gonna be a lot more mind games. I believe they are literally roommates as of right now, both in Korea. So we're gonna have another one of those dynamics as well. Does someone get booted out if one person wins? I don't know.
I mean, luckily, you're still in the playoffs, right? You lose this series, you go down to the lower bracket, you got to run into Cham, which is, I mean, if you're a Zerg, it's scary. If you're a Protoss, Cham obliterated Disc the other day, so maybe that doesn't feel all that great either. But Zombie Grub here, Scarlett, this is she went pool first, she went gas before hatch, and now this is a very quick layer. We've seen a lot of Nidus play on this map, but it feels, I mean, it's still only 2 bases. What's she up to?
Nidus Sling, Queen Nidus. There's a couple different places you can put your overlords here. So she brought 2 overlords over instead of maybe just like 1 and then 1 on like the on the midway point. So she has either the main base or the third base, which, by the way, Astrea is taking a fast third. 2 gateways into third, but no Stargates, no Twilight Council, not that that would help. And this does seem a very effective maneuver here from Scarlett.
I mean, I think she's taking a page out of Bly's book. There we go. Overlord drop on the way. And what she's going to do, and this is how Bly killed Shadone, actually, earlier on in the tournament, is you have this Link Flood. You put him in a Drapalord. Now, Bly actually hit from this. Oh, she's double progging it, so she's going to have options. But anyway, you release the Lings. They find time. They buy time for the Nidus to pop out. And then it's really hard to stop the Nidus. It starts to snowball. That's the goal. And for the first time here, I mean, this is this is 18 workers. This is, you know what? She's been talking to, not even no regret. She's been talking to Starkiller. This is a Starkiller build right now.
Hey, it's definitely been a thing, but it's going to be extra potent here up against what Astrea has chosen to go for. It's a very macro-oriented map if your opponent doesn't straight up cheese you. So that's what Scarlett chose, 100% on the cheese. Nidus from out, more Lings spilling through. There is a certain amount of like a timer on this though, right? It's a real shot of adrenaline. It looks very intimidating, almost impossible to hold the Lings and a couple of Queens. And then it does start to peter off if you can amass a certain number of gateway units. But I'm afraid Astrea is not going to get there before, well, maybe even 2 Nexus fall. Third actually not under attack, was cleaned up to be fair, but now it will be under attack as the Nidus room pops out.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I like what Astrea is doing, not trying to go too far from the ramp, holding that natural is what he has to do, but the problem again is that there are 2 Nidus on the map. So Astrea, he's on 1 base. Scarlett, functionally on 1 base, I guess as we can say it. She hasn't shown up the natural in the slightest and continues to pump Lings. But now Astrea doesn't have nearly as strong of a ramp. He doesn't have nearly as strong of a wall to keep himself safe on this right side. So that was a game. Knight is Queen Ling. Yeah. It works.
Yeah. If it was a game with a couple of oracles or maybe a stronger fighting unit instead of the sentry, which hallucinated, was useless basically. There's like I said, there's kind of a chance where there's like this like burst of lings and like, oh my god, I have absolutely nothing. Poor Protoss, we don't have anything, and then maybe you can cull it a little bit. So the next wave of Nidus Worm, it's only off of 2 bases. It's not much larva. Like, is not as bad as you think. It's maybe handleable, but not when you went 3 bases, no advanced technology, hardly any good fighting units, and then no shield battery for your first engagement either. Because honestly, even a shield battery with the probes that were pulled to the Lings and the Overlord and the main base, they actually are kind of okay if they have a shield battery with them, but not the case, right?
And the problem is, like, if you're going to defend that, Astrea had a shield battery at the natural, I think. He didn't have a shield battery in the main, didn't have one at the third. And going for that, getting a shield battery in every base, if your opponent's not Nidusing, that's a pretty significant expense this early on when you're trying to be greedy, when you're trying to make that happen. So even with that, I mean, I'm not going to say damned if you do, damned if you don't. Really, more than anything, Astrea had to figure out what was happening, and he had to get that scout off, and unfortunately, just a little bit too late.
Yeah, and I think any other type of all-in that I can think of would really hit a little bit too late. I mean, the hallucination that Astrea got, clearly something to help protect him while he did a fairly greedy build, even if the map was allowed it more. But there is one build that hits just that fast. That's maybe a proxy hatch as well, to be fair. But it's like there's a couple of builds that hit that fast, and anything else, maybe Astrea could have actually gotten some defenses up. But that was a really nice build order choice for Scarlett. She takes that map out of the equation too, because if that map went another way, went a macro way, maybe Scarlett has to deal with 4-5 base Protoss late game. It's not that great. Get that out of the way, move on to Oceanborn, a little more of a typical map. Now she is up 1-0.
That she is, and very, very quick. Not even really giving her opponent time to even get settled into a game. And in the upper left, in the red, up 1, Scarlett. And in the bottom right, we have the red Protoss Astrea, who has actually not lost to Scarlett at all in the year 2023. How many times have they played? Because overall, in Legacy of the Void, they are, I want to say it's 15-15. 13 if like they're tied in overall series. But they have played 4 times in the year 2023. And it's only 1 maps won by Scarlett. One of these series is even a 1-4. That was the playoffs of the last regionals. Yeah, I think I remember that series. Astrea just looked really dominant, but that was also kind of in this period of time where Scarlett didn't feel as strong as she has in the last couple months. She's gone and she's been the absolute ringer of the WTL, or one of the ringers for the WTL for Shopify, having, I think, the best. This may not be true as of this weekend. She didn't play. But in general, she's been one of the best WTL players. She qualified for GSL. She made round of 8 of the GSL, taking down Maru, which was super cool. Maybe it's Maru slumping. Maybe it's Scarlett playing really well. Didn't. She did take out Maru, but she didn't make the round of 8. It was her and Maru that got knocked out. True. I'm so used to someone taking down Maru, and that's enough to get through. I'm like, here we go. I've built my own reality here, ZG. It's fine. Yeah, I was gonna say the reality stone well and truly in hand. Well, the only reason that I was so quick because I was actually thinking of a follow-up point to where you were going, but then I did need to clarify because what she did lose in that GSL group that looked so promising for her was ZVP as well as ZVZ. So anyway, but she's been kind of like hit or miss in ZVP in general. Like on the GSL qualifiers, she won by defeating SOS, like in ZVP obviously, but then she lost her GSL group with the help of losing to a Protoss. So I mean, it's not too many samples to be fair, but the point is, it kind of describes Scarlett sometimes hit or miss as far as her strength in certain matchups, whether or not you feel kind of almost like she's weighed down by her perhaps dislike of certain things, or whether she's kind of moved past it and she looks incredible, or in general, any matchup, any player, she's totally on form and looks like she's going to win. I am Pyeongchang, or she looks really off. But with that first map victory going so swimmingly,
it really helps her, even if she's not playing 100% today. And that's definitely a win, no matter how you slice it. And Astrea is the one that's got to, once again, be reminded, you got to be scared of Scarlett. She will cheese.
Yeah, you know, she comes up to the scene back in 2013 there, hyperbolic time chamber in Korea, just this terrifying macro Zerg, just horrifying. And then, you know, a couple years pass, and it turns out that she becomes friends with No Regret, and we start to see some of that zanier side. 2-base swarm host, against parting, all of those things. And yeah, you're right, absolutely. At this point, you can't make the assumption that she's going to be greedy, but on the flip side, you also cannot make the assumption that she's just going to all-in you 5 games in a row like, say, Bly would do. And that's a scary position to be in, where you can't make assumptions. You really have to get a good scout and see what's going to happen. And hey, this is nice tonight on the third base. The probe will fall. It's not going to be 3:30 anymore. It's going to be closer to 4 minutes. And anything you can do to slow it Protoss down and forcing the Oracle back home as well is so nice for Scarlett here.
Yeah, unfortunately, that does come back home. I mean, it seems like Astrea wasn't really hell-bent on finding damage offensively with it anyway. Actually, not even following with a second Oracle, but rather a Phoenix. So that Phoenix is going to help clear out an Overlord, obviously. Not much else it can do, but clearing out an Overlord instead of going into 2 Oracle or 3 Oracle, that's already raising some suspicion for any Zerg players out there. What could you possibly be hiding behind this? And that could be, for instance, a faster Blink Stalker build. Although the third base will also reveal some intention there too. But right now it is just a Twilight Council, which is why I'm bringing up the Stalker build that we saw Skillus do actually earlier today.
I don't know. I really liked that Skillus build. It made a lot of sense given how Alcyone works, how Alcyone works, where you have that base and you kind of have this direct attack path. Oceanborn is not that map. It is wide open around the Zerg third. Scarlett's going to do a really good job of establishing creep around it. You don't have that nice and easy attack path that we saw Skillus really able to abuse in that game. That game on Alcyone. So maybe that's what we're gonna see. For now, though, you're right. It is building up into that, though. There's no Robo. There's no Forge. It's just Blink Stalkers, and well, we're gonna have to see how well this one works out.
It does seem like you don't really have to have a particular attack point. I mean, obviously, if you abuse a choke, that's the best case scenario. But we've seen, like, Hero, when he first started doing it, he was kind of out in the open on some of the older maps. But then I was going to say, I think on this map, you actually look to attack the fourth. So sometimes you see a gateway even behind this little bit of a brush off to the right of this Oracle. So that's not something that Astrea plans on doing. This should not be an extremely dedicated Blink Stalker attack, since he's not bringing the gateway. But if it's not, then we should be seeing some technology added on eventually. There's only so much you can do rallying Stalkers across the map, and that only sometimes is forcing Lings instead of drones. You might not get the fourth hatchery, or maybe you will. It's getting really dangerous, though.
Yeah, Scarlett's got a ton of Lings right now, and Blink isn't done. Astrea here is posturing as if he's really, really dangerous, and honestly, the micro getting his way into that around the wall is really nice, but so many Stalkers are going to fall here before Blink is done. This is, I mean, it's the best possible scenario for Astrea, given what happened. He finds his way around the wall, Oracle's on top. That's a lot of dead Lings, but it does take some of the power out of this push, and Astrea behind this, there's the Forge, there's the extra tech, but I don't think he got what he wanted out of this.
I don't really think so. I mean, he did force those drones, or sorry, the lack of drones, the non-drones. He forced the Lings. So there is that. I don't think, because it wasn't super dedicated, even though it did delay some other technology, I don't think it was the worst, but obviously a bit of a mistiming. Also, kind of do have to throw in the question of, was the Phoenix worth it? Because I feel like it's not often that the Overlord scout's the main necessarily, as much as it is like the third base, probe count, gas count, stalkers, yes, no, Y, N. But the second Oracle there from the get-go would have protected probably the third of the stalkers that died, half of them maybe. But oh well, it is what it is. As I said, I think Astrea could be okay with the damage done, but he does need to catch up on some of these other things, you know, like a fourth base and charge and +1.
Yeah, one thing I actually really like is we see Scarlett doing here, and this is something I've noticed Zergs doing a little bit more recently. We're building a macro hatch, that's totally fine, but I've seen them taking the fourth and the fifth base at the same time. They've been building the macro hatch. I mean, they've been building that one as well, but they've been, even if they're not drawing it up, they've been putting a ton of hatchers on the map, a little bit quicker than I'm used to seeing. And now, because Astrea went and he got damage on the hatch, didn't kill it. Scarlett, she's on 80 drones, but more importantly, she's a 6-hatch Zerg at 8 minutes into the game, and playing this Ling heavy style, you shouldn't run into the larva issues that Raynor ran into Skillus. That being said, Storm on the way in Zombie Group. I don't have to tell you, Storm against a bunch of Lings is pretty good.
Scarlett is set up well to max out and repeatedly max out, as good aggressive Zerg player would want to do. But Astrea is not so badly set up either. Again, he's actually had the worker lead like kind of this entire time. So now it's by 8, which actually seems almost like too much, but it is what it is. So that has eventually folded into those upgrades that were initially delayed. So Charge is done, Blink has been done, obviously. Most importantly, Storm is finishing up. And if we get just a couple of Archons, I think, to really anchor, then that would be fantastic. But right now, Astrea is moving out, and this is just wrong place, wrong time. He didn't realize that Scarlett was being aggressive. Oh, that is a huge problem. Oh, no.
That doesn't feel good. And is he recalling? No, he's just stuck in the middle of the map. He's not doing anything with this. I would say that it's not the end of the world. Maybe if you're quick on the recall and maybe you can take a fight. But Scarlett here maxed out so many Lings, so many Banelings, so much of everything. And the Storms are so far away from this army. Now they're going to arrive. But Scarlett, it feels like she can just bomb on top here. Probes go down. And where are the Storms?
They are holding. He doesn't see a good opportunity to use them. Now uses them on some Banelings to try and, I think, save the Nexus is what he was primarily thinking of. If Astrea can save both Nexus, I still don't believe. But
No.
that would be really impressive.
I mean, those are really nice Storms. He might have 1 or 2 more, but now the Lings are on top of everything. +1 attack on both sides. This army's dead. The economy's dead. The base isn't dead yet, but it doesn't matter because you can't mine out of it. And Astrea just moved out at the wrong time.
Yeah, I mean, again, we can blame scouting. The first game, it's a lot harder just because, like, it's so hard to scout such a fast Nidus room like that. So, okay, that happens. But the second game, it was completely lacking any amount of scouting. The idea that the Zerg player was about to get aggressive in general, that they weren't trying to go into some, like, defensive, like, lurker hive play. Not that a lot of them do. But, there's no check on that. There wasn't a check on the army. And that is obviously the biggest thing. The oracles are supposed to be flying around checking where the army was. I mean, even if you are sure they aren't attacking you somehow, the oracle is still supposed to be looking for the revelations because you're moving an army that's vulnerable to surrounds out in the map. I mean, I don't want to be too harsh, but that was a very big mistake. And actually, alongside Astrea's GSL games, I kind of feel like that's the thing that's holding him back right now, honestly. Because in his GSL games, I also felt like his lack of scouting on the map, seeing his opponent's attacks, was actually hurting him the most in some of his PvTs. So I don't know what's going on specifically for that. Obviously, he's still playing very well in general to get this far. But it's hitting him real hard in this best of 5.
Yeah, and I feel like that's been something that has been called out a kind of a weakness in his play for a while, where Astrea is going to do what Astrea is going to do. He's going to go for the weird build. He's going to go Nexus first on game 1, for example. And that is something he knows what he's going to do, and he's going to do it. And he really won't be dissuaded from that path all that often. And then why would you scout if you're just going to do the same thing anyways, and then you get punished? So I don't know that many other Zerg players would play the way that Scarlett's been playing and punish Max the way he is, but this isn't a team kill, but it might as well be. Again, they're in the same house. That is, you gotta figure they practice against each other.
They certainly discuss. That definitely happens. But yeah, it's not a good day for Astrea. It's a good day for Protosses, though, in general. But yeah, not for Astrea. In the bottom left, we do have the Blue Zerg Scarlett.
And in the upper right, looking for I think it's our second reverse sweep of the day for Maturino, Astrea.
It's such a disappointing thing in StarCraft, too. To know that you've actually got yourself into a decent position, but then one thing goes wrong. I mean, that's the most depressing thing sometimes about StarCraft. But I would say you don't often see such how to say, like, blatant seems like such a harsh word, that is the primary factor, it feels like. For, again, the game number 1, cheek, okay, whatever, not really gonna spend too much time on that. But game 2, that was a big problem. And Astrea knows that was primarily what was missing, because even if it's not guaranteed he holds, maybe he didn't do enough damage with his Stalkers, and it was still a precarious position. I guarantee the way he handles that is a lot more cunning, you know, a lot more agile. He's got some army on the front lines. He soaks a couple of banelings, blinks back. He makes sure that his storms are on all the chokes that are possible. He might even try to like kind of pre-engage a little bit as well once the oracles detect the incoming army. It just looks a lot better, but it just was completely out of position. Absolutely 100% completely dangerous, even if Scarlett was playing defensive. To be blind like that.
You know, Zombie Grub, I think the other way to take a look at this is say, you know what? There is one obvious thing that Astrea needs to fix to have a much better shot in these games. If I'm a pro player, I got to fix one thing. I got to scout more. If Astrea has the time to start to realize that and think about what's happening, that feels like a pretty easy fix. You know, just every 30 seconds, send the oracles in, whatever, set a timer for yourself. It's not like the builds are bad necessarily, or it's not like the micro's really bad or the macro's suffering or something that it feels like it's a little harder to just game over game improve. This is just Astrea that has to be a little bit more actively scouting with his units, which, I mean, we've seen him do it before. I think this is something that he can do again.
I really want to believe, and I love Astrea. I hang out with him, and I think he's a great player, great guy. But I do have to be honest and say that, like, I really want that to happen in his GSL group too. I was looking at the games, and I was like, oh, you just need to fix like one thing, man. Like, just be a little more like on guard against the pushes, be a little more forward when they come over, and you got this, you know? And unfortunately, he wasn't able to do it. He couldn't take the time necessary, I guess, in the 4 hours that GSL kind of runs usually to do that. But that means that I'm a little pessimistic when it comes to this best of 5, especially with Scarlett being able to also kind of cheese her all in him, like take advantage of the momentum that she's built up and just strike before he does get his footing. But I have great belief in Astrea in the lower bracket, 100%. I could see him losing this in one of the more depressing fashions, especially since his record thus far against Scarlett this year is so good. But then he comes back with vengeance next week, 100%. But right now, it's hard to believe, I guess.
I mean, it's easy to say that, but if he loses this game, he runs into probably the trickiest player we have left in the bracket. And that he runs into Cham, and Cham has some wild ZVP builds. So if you're running into scouting issues, and it's a struggle to stop it, it's a struggle to fix it. Honestly, I think Cham might even be a scarier. I don't know that he's a scarier opponent than Scarlett, but certainly maybe scarier on a different axis than Scarlett is.
Perhaps. I think that he will have taken more time to, I guess, think about it and kind of recover that particular point. Like, because I believe that he can do everything he needs to do to be a top-tier player. He can win the regionals. He can get to, you know, the later rounds of an international tournament as well. Absolutely, I believe in that. It's just that I do think that he needs a little bit more time than the allotted best of 5 is going to give him here. But versus Cham, I'd have a lot of faith, actually, because, you know, we're at that point where everyone you face is going to be tricky and difficult to face. But Astrea, previous winner, plural, of the North America, and now the mixed, like, he can absolutely do it. It's just today does not feel like his day.
No, but he is playing, like, the oracles are getting more damage this time. He gets 4 probes, get too much damage done. He's rebuffing. The lings aren't getting nearly as much. He does seem to be playing a little bit more better and more better. He does seem to be playing a little bit more active on the map in this game than he did in that last one. And again, you brought it up. That's the important thing. So he's going to see the gold base. There's no Spore here right now. This is going to be a nice punish. There's still 2 queens, but hey, a couple drones go down and the oracles survive. So all that's going pretty well. And this is only 2 oracles. He's really cut some corners here. This is going to be a faster blink than a lot of Zergs run into. And he does have I mean, you talked about Alcyone. You got a map that you really have some chokes to just funnel into, pound into.
The difference, though, is that, well, Skillus took the right side base and mined out the minerals. Astrea is moving away from that potential push. So even though he once again emphasized the Twilight Council greatly, the Oracle usage alone kind of deterred any thinking of an aggressive blink attack. You know, like the one he did last game, which is not very dedicated at all, but it was out in the map. Because the Oracles were out of juice if he decided to do it. It's actually still dangerous to do, I would say. But he's gonna. Because he is Astrea and he don't care what I think. But seriously, like, it's still very concerning to have your Stalkers without some stasis ward to fall back to or pulsar beam to fall back to.
This is
and I guess that's... Yeah, just creep clear up. I'm okay with that.
It's getting spooky.
Don't know where the lings are.
No. And he's taking the rich gas base as well. Well, he's trying to take the rich gas on the north side, but Scarlett's not even going to try to go for that. Instead, that is a ton of lings on this third base, going to force the full recall. And she just punishes the fact that Stalkers were on the map here. Now, Overcharge is still there, but it's going to go down. The Zealots, though, they're in such a good spot here. And Astrea, if he blinks back properly, you really shouldn't lose all that much to this. This was... Scarlett committed a lot, and she's going to commit even more. Astrea holds on, though, and it's not a lot of value.
I do wonder if she mistimed that +1 a little bit. It only finished when she was already done with the attack. Either she mistimed it a little bit, or she just figured that the time Astrea is back at home is good time for me, even at the cost of some of these lings, or both, whichever one. And again, because she does have the gold base, 60 drones would be kind of a questionable economy to go into more of a mid or late game, which definitely not late game yet, but it's fine with the gold base. So she can be aggressive off of this. Ling, Baneling, Hydra, with the Hydra upgrade finishing up, rocks being broken down, and Astrea, well, once again being under some pressure, but this time around hopefully actually scouting where the pressure is coming from, because he is set up okay. You know, he dealt with the Ling run by, he's on 4 bases, he's got his Witch Vest being gassed, and he's got Storm. If he's just in the right position, knowing where the army's coming in from, we're gonna see way better results.
I mean, he doesn't see this army, though, at all. He's actively scouting the main base. I think the big thing, there's no Hive on the way, not a shot here, it's just Slayer. That tells you something, and now, okay, he sees the army. I mean, I would think, oh, these Banelings don't have speed. Not just
now
yet.
They do.
Now they go.
Oh, that was such a dangerous roly-poly up a ramp. What the heck? Oh my gosh, just bathing in the storms.
The army's still there, but it is so low at this point. And yeah, we got one more storm. Banelings trying to get on top. At this point, the High Templar do have to morph down. Those storms were so juicy. Even still, this is a lot of Hydra Ling here. And we have to see some more Warpins. We got to see a better hold coming out of Astrea, but it's going to be enough here. This Hydra Ling, it's functionally an all-in, ZG. At this point, it's all dead. Storms, you can't bathe in them. They hurt.
Yeah.
They hurt a lot.
Yeah, that's the thing. At the end of the fight, it was clear just how one-sided that was. Because that was a terrible engagement. I think what's happened was that Scarlett figured that it was the time to go or die, basically. Like, she had already committed too much for how quickly things were going to unfold. So instead of wavering, which also would have had her bathe in storms, she commits. But obviously it would have been better to not have to kind of be forced to commit, I suppose, in the first place. But Astrea, with a great victory there, is on his road to taking his first game in this series. And hopefully the start of a little bit of a comeback. Game 5 in here. Scarlett, I guess, is going to try and play this out, kind of, but the gold base only gives you that burst for so long, especially now that gas is also one of her main issues. That's not very helpful.
Well, it's not like she's mining gas out of the gold base anyway, so there is that. But
no, it was her main issue when she made a bunch of banelings, and then she's gonna make them again. There we go.
There we go. I think the one bit of logic here you talk about, well, you're gonna bathe in storms regardless, is at least you're attacking on Astrea's side of the map. At least you are trading out, and therefore, Astrea, I'm not sure what the Sarkon's doing here, but will fall. The thing is that, like, theoretically, at least if you're attacking into Astrea, you're trading out on his side of the map. You have time to remax by the time he runs across, and her creep spread is good, so it's still kind of scary for Astrea to move out, and by the time he maybe moves out, Scarlett's gonna be maxed again. And I don't care how many storms there are, ZG, a massive Lingbane Hydra surround coming in from 360 degrees, you can still win fights that it doesn't feel like the tech should allow you to really find.
It's true, absolutely. And Astrea still has to be careful about that if he does move out, or maybe if he's Super Turtle. He does have 5 bases, moving on to a +1 air, so could be actually thinking about playing really defensively. Also, I do want to quickly shout out, before we forget that battle too far in the past, there is an Adept holding the line on the wall in the natural that also distracted like 25 lings. I was waiting for them to go over to surround the Stalkers and the building Archon, and they never did. So just shout out to that lady. Anywho, we have a max situation, but yeah, theoretically, Astrea's army is stronger as long as it doesn't get completely surrounded. It's got Storm, it's got some hefty units, it's got upgrades, but I think Astrea would be a little bit shy about actually pushing out after some of the recent games. And so, seems like his plan is to get to that Fleet Beacon.
Yeah, it's interesting to see different Protoss players taking very different approaches to the late game. We had Skillus go I think he built about 20 Immortals in that game against Rainer on game 1. We've seen Harstem, for example, going three Robo Colossus, building that really powerful ground pounding army. And it seems like Astrea, he's always been a Skytoss guy. He really likes these carrier timings. And it seems like that's where we're going to go. And oh, hey, nice Queen Snipe, but War Prism will give us life for it. And that doesn't surprise me, but it does give Scarlett a bit more of a window when you're building carriers like this, when you're spending so much money on a fleet beacon and a second Stargate and a +1 air attack and all of these things. That's a lot of deferred investment, and the Storm actually triggers the Hardened Shield on the Immortal, so that's a little awkward, but I mean, we're just seeing the power here, especially in chokes like this. There are so many Storms on the map.
Yeah, I don't think Astrea is going to get broken, but as you were saying earlier, Storm's coming down once again. If Scarlett can take some of these fights offensively, especially if she doesn't fully 100% commit, then she's kind of still buying some time for her own advancement back at home, Hive on the way. But if she can actually take a fight, then more power to her. And the Storm's no longer available. East side is going to cause some problems. Stalker's forced to blink up to the main base. Nexus under fire. Here come the reinforcements. The Stasis Trap going to help out a little bit as well. But Scarlett actually managed to find an entire Nexus right there. Astrea just a little weak on the east side.
Yeah, the danger balls, they go and they knock down a couple High Templar there. So you're right, there just weren't enough Storms. Hydraling Bane, super weak to Storms, but if you don't have it, well, that's a bit of a problem. And of course, Scarlett did have to back up. There were like 4 Storms in that army that was approaching from the west side there, from this rich gas base that Astrea has been trying to take. But Scarlett, she found the timing. She really has done a good job of punishing this, but oh, these Stalkers, they're trapped away. There's no way out of this, and the Storms, honestly, Astrea might not even decide to, there we go, he's gonna drop a Storm. That's a lot of dead Hydras, but on the left side, look at that Stasis Trap. Half the army can't even fight.
Yeah, that's pretty effective defense. Astrea finally coming out with the supply that we expect. Just winning these last 2 battles almost flawlessly, almost with an Archon on the right side. But Scarlett dipping way back down in supply. Probably was feeling like things were working out a little bit. So, you know, the supply feels okay. You got a Nexus. Things are happening. And then you take a couple of bad fights and you are not in a position in 14 minutes where you as Zerg player have been mining as much as you want for as long as you want with very few trades. You don't have a bank to fall back on. So you go to the remax and there's no remax whatsoever.
Yeah, and big problem here as well is +3 melee on the way. Fine, it's no ranged upgrades, and more importantly, no Hydra armor, no ranged armor in this against this player that's going into carriers right now. And Scarlett, she's got a Hive. She doesn't have any sort of Spire here. And these Storms with the carriers on top are just going to be so punishing. She tries to roll some Banelings, and it's 4 dead probes. It is not enough in the slightest. And now the mothership thinking about a recall, but unfortunately gets scouted out a little bit. So Astrea, that banger move, that absolute Chad move, is going to have to wait a little bit, but this mothership's just going to sit here and threaten Scarlett. And now she's not even allowed to move on the map, because the moment she does, the entire army recalls and kills a couple bases.
Exactly. Stuck between a rock and a hard place, and the more the mothership is allowed to freely sit there, the more that Astrea is certain that his opponent does not have Corruptors, or Viper even. So that's just good information for Astrea, who now will make his way through with the mothership to the bottom, extracting to the top, War Prism in the main perhaps as well. Multiple options for Astrea at this point. Doesn't even have to recall, actually. He probably shouldn't.
Have you heard the story of the mothership harassing drones and getting a couple drone kills? Because that...
Actually, yeah. I have heard this story. Oh, okay, that ended abruptly. GG's!
I mean, Scarlett was kind of dead there. But Zombie, you tell me that you have heard the story. So what is the story of the mothership harass?
The mothership realized that it can't do anything else and then just sat behind a base.
I mean, you know what? We don't think about it because generally motherships pop out so late that it doesn't matter, but motherships 2-shot drones. Like, it was actually doing a bit of a number on that drone line, which is wild to think about.
As someone who has mothership rushed quite a bit, I know. It's not a good build. Don't do it, but I have one with it, so.
I mean, if it's a bad build and it works, is it a bad build?
Oh, yeah. It's bad. I once mothership proxy rushed a Terran, and because they went 2-Rax Reaper, they didn't have anything that shut up. Like, my probes are all dead, but my mothership won.
This is what I love about StarCraft. It's like, you win definitely you lose games that you shouldn't win, but you absolutely win some games that you got no business staying in, because sometimes nothing shoots up, or sometimes you got Mass Phoenix and they don't shoot down, and it's like, well, okay, fine.
Yeah.
I got 1,000 lings, and good luck with that one. You're not going to clear this up. It's not going to happen.
Fun. It's fun. And what else was fun is that Astrea actually got a map here. Confidence slowly rebuilding. I'm still a little concerned. The scout on the army was still a little late for my liking, but it did happen. It did result in storms on top of a ramp, which is most ideal. But Astrea is still down a game versus Scarlett, who is awfully cutthroat. She still has a macro to fall behind, which is great. Worked out for her, but she also has those cheeses. So still a scary situation for the Protoss.
Yeah, and Zombie Grub, as we talk about cheeses that Scarlett may or may not throw, was it as Howda? Is that the cheese that we favor on this broadcast?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, just one of those accents that no matter how hard you are legitimately trying, it sounds like you're making fun of them. So you don't try. It's Gouda.
Well, that hopefully Astrea is able to play a little bit more Gouda in this game 4.
It definitely doesn't work for the pun if you say it in a Dutch way.
No, it really doesn't. I'm really disappointed in myself. Is that so my roommate moved out like a couple months ago, and for some reason he moved much of his stuff out of the apartment, but he left a package of smoked Gouda in the fridge. I guess he's not a fan, but I had the opportunity to have a Gouda prop for this conversation, and I left it in the fridge, and I'm very disappointed in myself.
It's too bad.
Yeah. The chat really wants to see a wheel of old cheese, or like a round of old cheese just on broadcast. That's peak StarCraft right there.
I don't want to see it on broadcast. I would rather see it in real life. Actually, sounds really delicious right now.
Well, Atlanta's coming up in a month. I will make sure to go and I'll pack that wheel of cheese just for you, Zombie Grub.
Please don't.
Just find you. Hey, you know what? A month ago, you said you were hungry for some cheese. So I don't know if this is good or not, but here you go. Have fun.
It's going to be like pocket cheese. It's going to be gross.
Oh, no.
No, I'm good. The thing is that when you go traveling and events and whatnot, you always eat so unhealthy. So having a wheel of cheese isn't going to help my issues there.
It could be good, though. I'm just really sad that Pig was there, but there was no in-person broadcast last year, because there is a grocery store in Georgia in the southern states called Piggly Wiggly.
Ah, yeah.
And he needs a hat or an apron or something, but that's not going to happen. But what is going to happen, Zombie Grub, is that Scarlett is ready now, and hard lead game number 4. Fear Dragon, of course, in his tweet says it's herd lead, I believe, as he has graced us with the pronunciation for all the maps. But regardless of how you say it, game 4 is ready. Astrea starting to wake up a little bit, I think. But the question now is whether that's waking up enough. Game 4 on the way. In the upper left, in the red, down a game, but again, showing more signs of life in that game 3.
Yeah.
Oh. Astrea. we okay?
Oh, it's Astrea, okay? He just moved all his probes.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
In the bottom right, says the blue Zerg, she is Scarlett.
I made that mistake of making sure all the assets were in place or whatever, and actually didn't look at the mineral lines. So I'm like, no, Zombie Grub, like, is there a cat attack or something? But no, it's just Astrea boxing the probes a little too hard.
Yeah, a little too hard on that micro.
It's important, making sure your probe splits happen early on at the high level. It's important.
It was after his probe split, which is a really confusing one. It's like, how did you mess that up? Boxing your probes used to be a good habit, because then you would learn how to count your probes to make sure that you had proper saturation, because they didn't just show the workers on top of the nexus. You kids don't know how good you have it. Now that spamming is useless.
Which was the better change, though? Making it so that workers show over the base and you can see it's 16 out of 16, or the change that allows you to mouse over your supply in the upper right corner and see how much of that supply is workers and how much of that supply is army? I mean,
Neither.
Sorry?
Neither. They're both bad. They're lowering the skill ceiling. People just need to learn to get good. Sick of this hand-holding. Let's go back to Brood War.
I need to individually tell every single one of my workers to mine, and if it doesn't, I just lose the game.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. That's how we got it.
It is a good skill to have.
Okay, it's a good skill in Brood War maybe, but Zombie Grub, tell me, how transferable is that? Like, you're working a day job, and you're like, look, I trained myself in Brood War. I now know to make sure my workers mine appropriately. How does that help? How is that transferable in any way?
That clearly helps you focus. I mean, if you know that you're supposed to check something every so often. I mean, like Scarlett, probably like amazing at telling time in terms of creep tumor intervals. That's a useful skill. She'll use forever, man.
You just got this clock in your head every, 32 seconds saying, hey, creep spread. Creep spread.
Yeah.
Creep spread.
And when she's like 70 or something and she like hasn't played StarCraft 2 or like professional games in a long time, every 32 seconds she'll have this like itch to do something.
What are my hands doing? Especially as you get older and start to get maybe a little bit more forgetful, you find yourself spreading creep on when you're crocheting or when you're mowing the lawn. You're like, why is my lawn covered in purple stuff? That's weird. What's happening?
I don't know how you transfer creep spread to lawn mowing. But there's got to be some way to do it. Anyway, the point is, it's useful. Don't tell me it's not. Don't tell Artosis it's not, because that would just really ruin his whole life, honestly. Astrea, going for 2 base. Robotics Bay. Really changing it up here for game 4.
Astrea has some really cool 2 base Warp Prism Disruptor builds, not only for like Warp Prism drops, which is pretty, I'm not gonna say it's standard, but it's discovered, it's discussed. But you were there at Katowice. Some of that build he pulled against Raynor, which was, I want to say, double Disruptor into double Immortal, 2 base all in, that killed Raynor on game 2. He's got some funky ways to build out of this. I don't know what he's gonna do exactly, but I'm excited to find out, because again, Astrea marches to the beat of his own, beat of his own drum, ZG.
Thought you were gonna try and come up with some Protoss thing.
Beat of his own mothership.
Sure.
There we go.
Yeah. Well, he does have a couple of different ways to follow this up. I mean, I feel like the classic way to me, and not the player classic, but the old-fashioned way, is to double disrupt their single Colossus push out. I don't know. I was really fond of that one. But you're right, Astrea doesn't necessarily always go for the same thing. Sometimes even actually making this into a pure macro game. Scarlett's initially reading this as the potential Adepts or DTs. Is affording a lot of lings, which doesn't necessarily need, and Spore Crawlers that theoretically are helpful if the Warp Prism flies over it, but not guaranteed.
And I like this move. Again, it's fake out. It's forcing a lot of lings out of Scarlett, as you said, those Spore Crawlers, and realistically, even if it doesn't get all that much done, it's still pretty nice. And Adepts into the 3rd base. A couple workers go down, make it 3, make it actually maybe even a couple more. And now this is a beautiful position. So even as the lings clean this, it's not going to be 6. No way. Yeah, it's only going to be 5. But now the Disruptors are out. We got 2 of them. The big thing, though, and I don't know if this is a mistake or not necessarily, ZG, but there's no Warp Prism speed. And there is a 2nd Warp Prism. And
It's
a 2nd
gotta be
Robo.
a mistake. He's banking so much cat.
What is happening? Okay.
Was that a mistake? Did he cancel it? Okay,
He canceled it. It's going to be a Disruptor.
No.
Okay.
The triple Warp Prism meta. I'm so ready for it.
You know what? We talked about marching to the beat of your own drum, but I think 3 Warp Prisms out of your first 3 units out, well, I guess 3 of the first 4 units out of your double Robo play, that might be going a little bit too hard in the paint there, ZG. Just a little bit.
I still say that Astrea was maybe focused a little bit more on micro, because his macro isn't looking the hottest right now.
No, but he does snipe a creep tumor, and that makes up for everything.
Yeah, does it? Oh, 2 drones, and nope, that one ends the gas. So 2 drones. Astrea going into double Colossus after this. Scarlett maybe scratching her head a little bit. Is, first and foremost, you got to think about the thing that kills you the fastest, I guess, which is definitely a 2 base all in. So that's preferably what she's thinking of, but it can be hard to decipher, and she is currently supply blocked. All the running around has done something.
I mean, again, it's one of those things that if you don't know what you're doing, your opponent can't know what you're doing either. And with 4 disruptors here, that's Astrea doesn't really send the shots off. And a little slow. Now he's going to get the queen, which is, again, kind of bare minimum damage. And he's going to try to get a couple more here. Drops these queens are clumped together. Yeah, he's going to get, only gets one of them. Not quite stacked properly. Even still, though, getting a couple queens is going to be really nice. And this is the Noah's Ark build, ZG. It's Warp Prisms 2x2, Disruptors 2x2, now Immortals 2x2. I guess that he's getting ready for the Great Flood of Zerg. Is that how that works? I don't know.
This is like that picture of Noah's Ark, but there's 2 male lions
Exactly.
leading up to it. The Protoss race will survive. Are you forgetting something? Oh.
I mean, let's be real here. Protoss, they got something special. They don't have mouths. The concept of consuming anything is wrong for them. The concept of orifices is just
and yet
uncool.
they have nipples.
Sorry.
And yet they have nipples.
Don't question it. It's fine. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Fine. This game is also fine. Scarlett, it's been a supply blocked every now and again, but it seems like injects aren't really an issue despite the queen losses. She does, preferably wants to be maxed out as fast as possible. Not necessarily for the incoming fight, but I think so she can actually scare with a potential fight right here. Being 40 supply down before her max might not lead to a lot of success, even with this big surround, negating the disruptors to a certain extent. The Colossus still standing strong, but here come the Roaches out on top of the whole army. Micro is in order. Colossus, Disruptor, Immortals, everything being microed. Most importantly, the Immortals actually just continuing to free fire. They actually weren't even touched. All focus is on the Colossus, and those Immortals rip through the Roaches. And Scarlett is in trouble. Astrea's micro coming through right there. But also, again, Scarlett not being maxed out for that fight. Great concave, but not enough units.
That's a big. I was willing to say, hey, look, it's a 3-1 Scarlett. That fight looked so good. And then the Warp Prism micro you talked about, ZG, just pummeling through everything. And now the Roaches, they're going to try to get on top. Colossus gets saved again. And at this point, now Astrea, he's up in army supply. The Roaches, they're petering in a little bit at a time. The base goes down. And instead of this being a 3-1 Scarlett victory, we're talking about how her matchup against Trigger is going to be pretty cool. We're going to game 5. It doesn't really feel like Scarlett can do a lot here. There's not enough production. 14 Lings, 5 Roaches. That's not nearly enough.
No, it's not. Just a couple of more Roaches could have done the trick right there, honestly. Or even a drone pool in the midst of the battle, which is a little bit more to ask than is realistic because it was so far away from the hatchery. But it was really very, very close. I do wonder if perhaps trying to... Yeah, I mean, obviously all the targets here, all the targets, the Disruptors, the Colossus, the Immortals, they were all super important to the success. But I witnessed those 2 Immortals just punching away without any repercussions and almost nothing but Roaches left over. And I was like, man, they must be feeling high on life right now. This is what they were literally made for. And Scarlett is going to be forced to a game 5.
And the coolest thing about this as well from Astrea is because he got those 2 Warp Prisms early on, he can have one back off the army that's warping in and still have the second one there to keep Colossus alive, to keep Immortals alive, to redefine the fight as it happens. And, I mean, that was pretty similar to the build that he used against Raynor at Katowice. I think it was more Immortal focused in the Katowice game, if I'm remembering right. But he's got the builds. He marches to the beat of his own mothership, and now, I mean, that wasn't even the cleanest build. That wasn't even the cleanest game coming out of Astrea. We talked about how his macro was not quite as strong because he was focusing so much on the micro. If he's able to do that again and macro properly, I mean, it's looking rough for Scarlett, but we have the most controversial map name in the pool. It's going to be Hecate for map number 5. And I don't know. Do you have the same attack opportunities that you do on a map like Hard Lead?
I mean, I'm sure there's some, I'd have to see it and think about the direction of attack, but there might be some. I think it's just a build you don't necessarily see more than once. And as much as Astrea, maybe it didn't have like a perfect build, like Scarlett also was missing a couple of macro cycles. Like, again, she got supply blocked, and that supply block could have been theoretically down the line, like 4 additional Roaches or 3 additional Ravagers or whatever it was, right? And it was so close. And that might have been a big difference too. So they were definitely forcing errors to each other, right? Which is the ideal rather than unforced errors. But now it all culminates to a game 5. Who makes the least errors? Who has the best game plan? Scarlett looks so solid, starting things off with the cheese into the macro victory. But Astrea is looking to claw his way back, stay undefeated against Scarlett in 2023. Let's see if he can do it. In the top right of Hecate, it is Astrea.
And the bottom left in the blue. Went up 2, but Astrea starting to claw his way back for the rebellion. Scarlett. And you know, Zombie Grub, final thought about that game before we figure out just what goes in Noah's Ark in game 5. Scarlett had no larva as the fight started. She spent everything. She was trying desperately to remax. But what that meant was instead of being maxed and having, I don't know, 20 larva, 10 larva, 15 larva or something that in the tank to remax as you take the fight, she had like 5. She really didn't have, not only was her army not maxed out quick enough, she didn't have the reinforcing power that you would normally like in a fight like that. So even as maybe the first fight goes pretty well for Astrea, it's the second one and the roaches continuing to pile on in that really added that power. So yeah, you're right. Macro mistakes out of Scarlett that made that a lot harder than it had to be.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. It's definitely a close enough battle that a couple of faster reinforcing units could have really swung it around. Also, I do feel like it doesn't even have to be maxed. You know, it's the word I use just because it's easy to say, but 200, Scarlett probably deals with that almost no problem by the way that ended up being. But even 180, 20 more supply before she was forced kind of to take the engagement. I mean, that would have been so big. But that is the complicating factor for Scarlett, was that, like I said, it's not that she wanted to be maxed out for purely defensive defense, yeah, English. Because as soon as she let those Colossus abuse more of her third base or fourth base choke, was it? Then it's even harder, right? Like, she needed to be ready at a time which she could collapse in on Astrea before Astrea got the prime choke to abuse. So that was her conundrum. Wait for more supply or try and take advantage of the situation that was given to her. And, well, she obviously chose the latter. And the disruptors were less effective. The army was mostly surrounded, but just not quite enough units. Kind of a bummer. I wish that the marriage would be there at the right time, but not to be so. And now Astrea adding on another aggressive build. Twilight Council first coming through.
Yeah, and you know what? You say it's a bummer, but honestly, I can't really find it in my heart to be too sad because it means we get another game. It means we get game 5, and we continue this trend of most of the games today, they have been going the distance. But, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you want to look at things, you're right. It doesn't seem like Astrea wants to take this game to 10, 15 to 20 minutes to really take it late in this game. No, there's a Twilight on the way. There's a Robo on the way. This feels like a Glaives build. And given the fact that this is a block on the natural, the circulation between the main and the third can be pretty scary. But as we look at this and we're still waiting, okay, there's Glaives on the way, but it was a bit delayed, Zombie Grub.
Yeah, minerals a little bit, I think.
Okay.
Maybe he didn't stack his probes or something like that.
Maybe he pulled him too early like he did in game 4.
Oh, maybe he did again. I wasn't paying attention.
I didn't see it.
Or didn't have his gas perfect, something like that. But regardless, it is going to be a 3-gate Resident Glaives build. So not super dedicated. Constantly double checking in case I math wrong. And soccer on the way out to, well, not even really necessary, honestly. The Overlord's definitely going to see it. You're not stopping the Overlord from seeing it, but you might kill the Overlord, I suppose. So Scarlett's definitely going to know that it's Resident Glaives, and she'll even know that it's 3-gate. I suppose one could be proxied. But yeah, she'll know a lot. And Scarlett's, the knowledge should come great power. And that Dark Shrine is also on the way in the natural.
Yeah, so she's going to scout out, yes, there's a Robo that this is 3-gate, and that's a solid scout. She's not going to see the Dark Shrine. So this actually might turn into a bit of an issue, Zombie Grub, where you see it's an Adept build. You say, okay, fine. You know, it's 3-gate Glaives. This is a bit greedier of an Adept build. It's a bit of an expand build. I don't need Spores. I'm going to defend this. I'm going to build a bunch of Roaches. I'm going to build a bunch of Lings, and I'm going to be okay. And then the DTs come in, and you lose a base, and the game ends very quickly. So we're going to have to keep an eye on whether she gets the lair quickly enough, or more likely, whether she gets the Spore down in time.
I don't feel so good.
Yeah, get me off this wild ride. Mr. Protoss, I don't feel so good. She is not prepping for this.
No, I think she might be. I mean, certainly if she also had 3 more drones and however much else she could have gotten, if she knew for a fact what that last build opener was, that also would have helped her maybe barely win. I mean, she is determined not to lose to the Adepts, not just like saving some money on score quotas, I guess, but also only 35 drones. That she is just completely missing out on the potential of a Dark Shrine follow-up. 1 Spore on the main base, finally coming down, but the first DT has warped in. Second one headed to the main. This is still going to cause a lot of chaos and carnage, and there's still the Adept you have to worry about as well.
Scarlett's not going to be mining out of any base for just a little bit of time, and she tries to buy that time, just pulling drones everywhere. Look at her income. It's going to drop precipitously. But if she can knock this army down, if she can kill all the Adepts, kill a bunch of the DTs, maybe that's gonna be enough. But and for now, some of those Adepts have gone down, but it's 9 dead drones, 10 dead drones. This would be acceptable, maybe. Actually, I'm not even sure of that. If she didn't lose a single drone, if she was able to pull them around and lost mining time for 15 seconds, but everything else dies, losing 10 drones on top of it, she's only on 39 here. It's a rough time in Zergtown, ZG. She got wind of this in the last second, but that just wasn't early enough.
Right. And she made so much army that it also had hurt her drone count already. So, I mean, she's recovering. She now definitely has an army count that will not die anytime soon. The Adepts have completely given up trying to even distract. So she doesn't have to worry about that for a little while, but it's definitely not the smooth going of a Zerg player that they would desire. Drones first, army second, and even the Adepts still trying to find little bits of damage, of course, with the Warp Prism Micro. You could even add in maybe some Archon drops, which actually might be wise. Warp Prism quite low at this point. Not the best start. Recoverable, yes, but definitely not a great situation when you are very close to being reverse swept. You know, I gotta keep that in mind. Scarlett was on the brink of winning almost 3-0, and now game number 5 starts off rather poorly.
Yeah, and the thing that feels so bad about this is Scarlett, her army, I mean, at this point, it's equal army supply, but for a while, her army she had good army supply. But because this is DT follow-up and not anything else, you can't, without a lair, you can't run across the map. DTs will shred things, you don't have mobile detection. Zerg has to stay at home. And look at what Astrea's doing here. He's not giving Scarlett time to get ready. He's not giving her time to drone back up into this. She's on 74 drones, desperately trying to rebuild her economy. And now the Adepts, the Immortals as well. I mean, the Lings have a decent surround here to start, and drones aren't falling. So yeah, maybe this was a bit of a mistake from Astrea, actually. I like the idea, punish the Zerg when they're trying to re-drone, but there's a lot of dead Adepts.
Yeah, maybe not the best situation to use them in, you know, offensively like that. Maybe they should have been with the main push, but now still killing a couple of drones. I think it was really scary because Scarlett literally made 20 drones as Astrea was on her doorstep. That's a scary thing to say. But Astrea did end up dividing the army. And I'm not saying it would have won even if it wasn't divided, but it just was a lot more manageable. She once again loses drone, but retains army, so she can replace the drones with some comfort. I did also want to mention, it did look like she actually just straight up made a mistake. She made 20 drones at once. Really can't get over that. And she was fairly oversaturated. She still doesn't have a 4th hatchery. So I think she went a little bit into autopilot mode. It did feel like a moment that Astrea would be able to strike if he happened to be striking. But even though it kind of set up to look like that, no, Astrea ends up backing away. It's not the end of the game for Scarlett at all.
I mean, the bright side of this is Scarlett probably made a mistake, made 20 drones when maybe she should have built some more army. But now it means that when you lose 17 of them, your economy is still in a decent spot. I mean, it's still expensive. It's still a lot of money that you're not spending on army or tech or whatever else you want to build. But it is 61 drones. It's not a horrible economy. It's not great, but at least it's playable.
She's saturated almost. She needs 2 more drones, but she's basically saturated anyway. The extra like 6 drones or 8 drones, whatever it was on her 3rd base that she had, I believe was a mistake. You know, there's not much to oversaturating, especially by that amounts, and perhaps just habit as well, because usually a 4th base would be down, whatever it is. But he's kind of right. I mean, she's got an opportunity. She's got an opportunity to be all in. Use the army that she's built to try and win the game, and then maybe you win the game or you deal just enough damage to actually macro out. But she's definitely got to do something with the army. Finally trying to set up to do so. But Astrea, I think, has been expecting this for the last 3 minutes. So every defensive setup possible. Shield batteries, Archon, disruptors, splits, chokes being abused. Astrea, best chance to hold right here. Best chance to reverse sweep Scarlett. in the American Regionals, and we are witnessing it. GG! Astrea. Wow.